What is enough? And this could be a very relative question, as far as how we navigate in life, a kind of gauge of, let's say, when to fill up and nourish and take in, and when to stop taking in and leave time to be and digest. It could be a more relative inquiry of how much to do or to push or to engage, and when to know the sense of when to stop. But there's also a way to engage that question at a very, very deep level. And I think that when we engage the question, what is enough, in a way where we just open to the sense of not truly knowing what that actually is, we can be orienting toward a sense of our true nature that expresses in a deeply satisfying way. And the sense of our true nature that is pointed to when you hear terms like nirvana, the term nirvana translating as a kind of cessation. And the way that I want to speak about this question, what is enough, in this more existential realm, is really in two parts. And I want to look at that from the vantage point of understanding more clearly the egoic drives. So I imagine many of you have heard that Audio will often define the ego as a movement of grasping or pushing away, and I like to borrow that notion quite a lot, and I'm going to kind of use that notion as a springboard for the topic this evening. So and then I'll move on to speak about this existential question, inquiry, what is enough, to speak about the paradigm that is not of ego. So if we were to think about this notion of discovering what we essentially are, it's often called our true nature. We could say our spirit nature. To discover that, but also to evoke that sense of our spirit nature, we could really look at this mechanism of the egoic movements to grasp for what we desire and to fill any sense of lack or needs within ourselves, to seek through desire and become more aware of those ways of orienting. And we can also become more aware in our lives how we might be resisting and pushing away our experience in a way to correct any sense of wrongness, or to engage in a kind of resistance that is kind of the twin to this movement of desire and grasping. So as we become more aware of those patterns within ourselves, we then have a greater sense of choice, or a greater sense of opening to a notion of what we are that's not defined by these movements. Those movements may still continue to play out in our lives at varying levels, and sometimes they even play out in very appropriate ways. Sometimes it's very appropriate to engage and go after a certain outcome or goal, or to address a need, and sometimes it's very appropriate to when we feel resistance, to be clear about setting boundaries or limits that are appropriate to our well-being. But there's also a way that when those patterns go on overdrive and they become our norm and the way we know ourselves, then we may find that they really obscure what it is that we are, that's not defined by these movements of grasping and pushing away. And so it might lead us to some sort of question that might put a wrench in these movements. And so one way that you might think about it is that this question, what is enough, is pointing to an interruption of the grasping, desirous process by orienting us to something that's not of this grasping paradigm, and that's pointing us to the ground of our being that is the very ground of true satisfaction. You could also say that this very same question, it could throw a wrench or kind of short circuit the movements to resist and respond from a sense of wrongness or fear, in a way that it's also really pointing us to a state that's expressive of surrender.